Hello and welcome to episode 370 of the Juicebox Podcast. Today's episode is with Tiff, and Tiff is from Australia. Tiff has so much what I call good energy, it may actually be more than a person is allowed to have inside of them, but she has trouble holding it all in. A lot of it comes out while she's talking, which was just 100% delightful. This was one of those conversations where, because of the time zone change, I think it was the middle of the night while Tiff was recording and I was early in the morning. It's, I don't know how to describe it exactly, but she's terrific. And this episode is a massive amount of fun. Her accent, if you aren't from Australia, it'll take a few minutes, but you'll settle into it and you'll start hearing her really well. I mean, you got used to my accent. Please remember that nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Always consult a physician before making any changes to your healthcare plan or becoming bold with insulin. I don't think there's much left to say except maybe perhaps gird your loins. This is Tiff.
I wrote this thing to you, and I never actually remember what I wrote because I'm sure I just wrote about going on a trip to Europe and America, but I talk about, I didn't know what I was going to talk about.
So, Tiffany, I'm not going to answer you until after you introduce yourself. Go ahead.
Okay. No worries.
This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by Omnipod, makers of the tubeless insulin pump that my daughter has been wearing since she was 4 years old, and by the Dexcom G6 continuous glucose monitor. Find out more about the Dexcom G6 at dexcom.com/juicebox. And you can get a free, no-obligation demo of the Omnipod tubeless insulin pump sent right to your home by going to myomnipod.com/juicebox. Would you like to help support type 1 diabetes research and support the podcast at the same time? Well, the T1D Exchange is looking for you. If you're a United States citizen and have type 1 diabetes, or the parent of a child who is a United States citizen who has type 1 diabetes, go to t1dexchange.org/juicebox. I just did this the other day. It took about 7 minutes. I answered some fairly basic questions about Arden's type 1 diabetes, and now her information is being used to make advancements and improvements for people with type 1. This is completely anonymous, 100% HIPAA compliant, and 1,000,000% a great thing to do. t1dexchange.org/juicebox. Add your voice.
I'm Tiff. I'm in Australia. I live in Wangaratta, and I've got type 1 diabetes. But that's not all of me. I'm also a parent.
Oh, very nice. How many kids?
I've got 2 children. They're 2 and 3.
Oh, you're just getting started. Good for you.
Oh, no.
You've allowed their father to stay in the home? We're all together? You didn't tell him?
No, yeah, he lives with us, yep.
Yeah, he's still there?
Yep, yes.
Well, he's on a short leash. Let's just say that. I'm sure he'll do something incredibly wrong soon. You'll be very angry with him, and that'll be the
end. Oh, daily.
Daily, right? So, Tiff, I'm gonna totally leave in what you said before you introduced yourself because of our geography, and it is 10 a.m. where I'm at and midnight where you are. It's been difficult, obviously, to get something set up, and more so than just the geography of us getting our time zone straight enough to make this recording. You and I have gone back and forth a number of times, and almost had it happen. It was supposed to be yesterday. It was so great. You sent me a message yesterday. You were like, "Is this happening in an hour or tomorrow?" And I was like, "Well, it's supposed to happen in an hour, but if I'm being honest, I don't feel great. And if you want to do it tomorrow, we can do it tomorrow." So we're doing it today. So my point is we've gone back and forth a number of times. And then the first thing you said is, I forget why I said I wanted to be on the podcast. And what I was going to tell you, Tiff, is that I forget why you're coming on because it's gone back and forth so many times. So why don't we just pretend you're on because you have diabetes, and then we'll figure the rest of it out. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, no worries.
Cool. All right. So we'll dig down, we'll start by doing this. So how old are you right now?
Well, actually, it's my birthday. Well,
Is
it
it
was my
really?
birthday until 15 minutes ago. Yes, it is.
Congratulations.
I'm now 39.
Well, happy birthday.
Yeah, nearly 40. Oh, my God. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. That's exciting. It really is. So it's your birthday. You turned 39 years old. But
Yes.
how old were you when you were diagnosed with type 1?
I was 11. It was I think it was July. It was Earth Day in July. So, if there's an Earth Day, I don't know if it's a national thing or if it's an international thing.
I've heard of it.
But, yeah.
So
that was when I was like.
Okay, so 21, 31, and then we're going to go 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, just 38, just 29. So 18, 28 years? Sounds like 28 years, right?
That's right, yeah.
All right. And that math works in Australia or in America or anywhere, really.
I think maths is pretty much the same worldwide, isn't it?
I've heard it's pretty universal. Yeah. I mean, I haven't been everywhere, Tiff, but my understanding is that 2 plus 2 pretty much equals 4 everywhere. So 11 years old in Australia, you're outside, you're riding a wallaby, your mom calls to you. What happens next?
Yeah, so I was at school. It was probably took about 2 weeks for it to develop. And we don't have wallabies running around the main street. It's nothing like that. Although I did go to school in a very small town called Queenscliff, which is on the coast of Victoria, down the bottom of Australia. It was... Sorry, my cat's running around. I'd been drinking heaps and heaps of water. Like, I hate water. Back when I was a kid, if you gave me water, I'd be like, hell no, I want Coke or cordial or orange juice. And so Mum knew something was up because I was drinking water, and I hate water. Yeah. And I was drinking an entire bottle of water before school. Then I was drinking an entire bottle of water before lunch at school. And I'd drink a whole bottle at lunchtime, and then I'd come, as soon as I finished school, I'd go back to my nana's house because my mum worked full-time. Right. And I would drink another entire bottle of water at my grandma's house. Yeah. Yeah, and I'd go to the toilet numerous times during the night. Yeah. And this went on for about 2 weeks.
2 weeks. And so I just want to, before we move forward after the water drinking, I want to say that when your cat ran around just now, if you would have just said, oh, I'm so sorry, my pet wallaby, it took my attention away. I really would have been delighted, but that's okay. It's not up to you to make the comedy. So, anyway, okay, a ton of water drinking, not normal for you. And that was enough to make your mom go, something's wrong with her?
Yeah, but she had to wait till Friday because she wanted to have a long weekend, and she didn't want to get time off, have time off work unless she absolutely had to.
Oh, okay.
So she waited till Friday.
So your parents are like, look, there's something really wrong with her, but we cannot deal with it on a Wednesday. You need to, did anyone pull you aside and grab you by the shoulders and go, Tiff, listen, honey, you need to not die until Friday when we can go to the doctor. And this wasn't because the doctor is on some safari trek from your house. It's just that your parents just wanted to get to the weekend, make it easier. I understand this, by the way.
Exactly, yeah. Because, you'd rather deal with a problem on Friday and then have the weekend to deal with it as well, if in case it's a sickness, and then go back to work on Monday and everyone's all good.
I like it. So our plan is to diagnose, treat, learn to manage, and get back to life in about 72 hours. I like the upside of this. It's very it's an energetic idea for you. They're like, we can get this done. So you're off to the doctor. Is it just as easy as like, hey, I've been drinking a lot of water, and they say you have diabetes, or how does that process go? Do you remember?
Yeah. It was 1991, and I do quite distinctly remember because my mum would always be like, you're going to leave the house, you've got to go to the toilet before we leave the house. So I went to the toilet, and then we go to the doctor's, and I was we sat down. I don't even remember think I sat down. I just went straight into the doctor's room, and she said, okay, I need you to do a wee in a cup. And I said, I just went to the toilet because my mum Mel tells me I've got to. Mm-hmm. And she says, okay, well, I've got this little machine here. She says, I've got to take some blood. And just put your finger out. And I'm just like, okay, no worries. And that was my first blood test.
Yeah. Well, and you've named the episode Wee in a Cup. So you're all set. I really You guys do all the work. It's true. So your little finger stick, do you remember what you were? Or do you remember the feeling in the room when it happened?
I was just sitting there going, what the hell, maybe they're going to do this so that they can see what's wrong with me,
Mm-hmm.
and I can go back to school, because I was ready for school because it was birthday, and I had my beautiful picture that I'd drawn during the week that I wanted to take to school and display and show everyone. I was dressed in green because it was Earth Day, I'm like, this is going to just be, this will be over by 9:30 and I'll be at school by 10. It'll all be good.
Yeah, because in your life, Tiff, at this point, the only real thing that's going on for you is just an incessant thirst. There's nothing else happening that's got you thinking you don't feel well.
No, and I'd lost weight, but my dad tells me now that I had gone, I looked very, very skinny, and my face, he could see all the bones in my face,
oh my gosh.
Which wasn't normal for me because I was a chubby kid. I put the weight back on straight away after I got diagnosed anyway, but
Listen, I just looked at myself in a reflection. I thought, there are bones in your face? How would I even be able to tell that under my cheeks? No. So you were pretty gaunt, and it's funny. He knew. It's funny because I didn't know when I looked at Arden until she put a couple of pounds back on, and then I looked at a picture from the week before and thought, wow, how did I not recognize that?
Yeah.
Well,
but my mum, for the life of her, would never say anything like that because my mum was too busy dealing with everything else.
So she's just a busy. Do you have other siblings?
I've got one brother who's 5 years older than me.
Okay, all right, and he kept her busy.
Yeah, and he worked, so she worked full time. My dad worked full time. My dad was an interstate truck driver, so I was basically. I'd go to work with my mum in the morning, and I'd go to school, and I'd see mum before I went to school, and then I'd see mum when she picked me up after work. We'd go home, have dinner, and I'd go to bed. Yeah. So I saw my mum probably, I don't know, 4 hours a day.
Your parents weren't looking for other stuff to do, is what you're telling me.
No, they were just working because
busy enough, right? So
they were just trying to get ahead in life.
Yeah, I understand. You start out 91. I'm assuming they gave you was it needles or pens, or how did you start?
It was just pens. Sorry, no, it wasn't. It was we had syringes.
Okay.
Back then, and the big, lovely insulin vials, and I had to learn how to draw the insulin out of the vial so I could have my injections.
Yeah, so you're starting it just at go, right? You have no knowledge about diabetes whatsoever. And so you're starting with just, here's how you get it out of the vial. Now you're going to stick it into your arm, or your belly, or wherever you're going to put this. Did your parents become involved in the process of day-to-day management, or was it pretty much on you right away?
My mother, she was in shock. She didn't understand. She couldn't deal with it. And so I went straight to hospital because as soon as the doctor took my reading, I think it was in the 30s. In Australia, we use a different measurement as well. Mm-hmm. So I was 32.5 millimeters per megaliter or something. And you use deciliters. So your measurements are I think it might be about 500.
Yeah, I'm going to get up.
That's just by...
I'm going to get my graph up right now for this conversation. I have one that I like to use in this situation here. Let's see. But so you were plenty high enough, but you really only saw the thirst for a couple of weeks, right? Yeah.
It happened pretty quickly. It wasn't something that was going for months and months and months like some people.
Yeah. Did you need insulin right away, or were you in a honeymoon situation where it was kind of sometimes you needed it, sometimes you didn't?
It was straight away. I went from no insulin to I couldn't not have insulin.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. It's funny because I talk to some people now who find it so early. You know what I mean? So early.
Yeah.
They can't even use insulin properly for a while because even having any kind of basal insulin running ends up being too much. It's interesting.
Back in 1991, I don't think they even had the testing. I do remember at some point, like I must have been in high school, and my parents went and had their very first blood test to see, and my brother. I should also mention my brother isn't my brother. He's actually adopted. So we are blood relatives, but we're not actually brother and sister. So I do refer to him a lot. And I grew up with him in the same house, calling my mum and dad. But they're just blood but just blood, not mum and dad by parentage.
All right, Tiff, hold on. You got me on that one. I'm going to start over. So you have a mom and a dad in the house. Dad's a truck driver. Mom's there. Both of those people made you. Your dad?
Yes.
Okay. And then your brother, who was 5 years older than you, was he a half-brother from your father or from your mother?
No,
not at all.
Not at all. No, he's my mum's sister's son.
Mom's sister's son. Took him in.
Yes.
But adopted him.
Yes. Essentially.
And,
yes.
And he's a blood relative still because he's your mom's sister's son.
Yes.
Okay. Thank God we went through that, because your initial explanation made me think that you had that cat had mauled you, and you were a rabbit at this point, and you didn't know what you were saying, because you were like, he's my brother, but he's not my brother, but he's blood related. And I was like, hold on a second, that doesn't make any sense. But
it's an interesting situation. But I mean, I grew up knowing that he was my brother because he called my mum and dad, but he's also my cousin. Yeah. So his brothers and sisters would visit us, but they're his brothers and sisters, and they're not mine. Right. Because he's my cousin, but he's my brother because we grew up together. He was there before I was born. He was like the first. Yeah, he's my brother.
I have such a big smile on my face because there's a part of me that wants to take those last 20 words and make them the title of the episode. But that won't happen. Don't worry. But I completely, Tiff, oddly, I understand exactly what you're saying. And please keep in mind, it's late at night for Tiff, okay? So she's... Okay, so you grew up having a brotherly, sisterly feeling towards him because he was there. I have to ask, even though I'm upset at myself for wanting to continue with this, but why did he live with you, but his other brothers and sisters remained back with his parents?
Well, his mum was very young when she had him. So she had one son first, and she was, I think, 15 or so. And my grandfather made her give him up. And they've only just been reunited last year. So that was he's now 45. Okay. And then she had my brother, and her partner at the time was then killed tragically in a fire. I think that was his dad. I don't know. They've all got different dads. Anyway, something happened to him, and she wasn't allowed to keep him either because my grandfather wouldn't let her, and she wanted to have a life because she wasn't even 20. So she just went,
there's part of me that doesn't even want to talk about diabetes anymore. This is fascinating. Do you have any idea what kind of fire? Was it like in the home, or was he a firefighter?
Yeah, it was in the home. He was a smoker. He was a smoker, and he
God.
fell asleep smoking.
Tiffany, how many do you have? Like, do we even need to talk about the diabetes, or do you have like 1,000 other great stories? Is this an Australian thing? I need to know.
No.
Oh my, probably. Listen, you get caught on that, like you got water all around you. It must make you a little crazy at some point. Because really, without a plane, you're stuck there. You can't drive away from Australia. All right. Okay. All right,
anyway,
how did you find growing up with diabetes? Was it something that bothered you, or were you pretty just kind of chill about it? What was your overall, 11 to graduating from high school kind of experience? Okay, let's just take a quick break. Tiff has got, like I said, a ton of good energy, and she has not yet begun to talk. So just need a second here, right? We'll collect ourselves and get ready to keep going. While we do that, let's talk about what I consider to be the gold standard of type 1 diabetes care. Dexcom G6 continuous glucose monitor and the Omnipod tubeless insulin pump. Let's start with the Omnipod because it's easy. It's an insulin pump. It's tubeless. It's small and compact. easy to hide below your clothing, or you can wear it out and let everybody see it if you want to. It's completely flexible. And flexibility is what you need when you're managing type 1. You're going to have the flexibility to bathe without taking off your pump, to swim, to play sports with other people if they ever let us do that again, to go outside for a run, to do everything that everyone does in life, except you get to do it without being connected to a bunch of tubing or having to take off your pump and watch your blood sugar shoot up because you don't have insulin. You just get to keep the Omnipod on. It's small, it's tubeless, it's easy. And they'll send you a free, no obligation demo. So you don't even have to take my word for it. You get to try for yourself. myomnipod.com/juicebox. Take you a couple of seconds to put in the information they need. And by they, I mean Omnipod. And they'll send you off right in the mail and get you going with that free, no obligation demo. It's well worth your time. Now, the Dexcom G6 continuous glucose monitor, this is another thing that I don't know what I'd be doing without it. Showing my daughter's blood sugar, speed, and direction without a finger stick. That in itself is just stunning. Arden's sleeping right now. It's early in the morning. Let me tell you something right now. Her blood sugar is 101. As a matter of fact, I'm helping a young man named Joe right now, and Joe's blood sugar's 111. And Arden's friend, Yanni, her blood sugar's 70. I can see all of that on my cell phone. Right here, holding it on my iPhone. If I had an Android, I could do the same thing. And you could as well. You could see the direction and speed of a loved one's blood sugar on your device. More importantly, you could share that information with up to 10 people. Say you're the one wearing it, an adult with type 1 diabetes, and you just want, your partner to know. That's doable as well. This thing's going to give you alerts and alarms that you get to decide on to let you know when your blood sugar is leaving the range that you've set. Arden's range is from 70 to 120. She never gets too low or too high without us knowing that it's happening, so that we can make good, well-considered decisions about insulin and carbohydrates to keep her from bouncing all over the place. So sure, the Dexcom's great for safety, and sure, it'll wake you up in the middle of the night if you get low, but there's so much more that it'll do. Find out more about those things at dexcom.com/juicebox. While you're there, go to myomnipod.com/juicebox, get yourself a demo pod, and why don't you just make it a trifecta? t1dexchange.org/juicebox. You can help improve knowledge of type 1 diabetes, help accelerate the discovery and development of new treatments, and generate evidence to support policy and insurance coverage changes that can and will help people living with type 1 diabetes. It's completely anonymous, totally safe, 100% HIPAA compliant. t1dexchange.org/juicebox. All these links are in your show notes and at juiceboxpodcast.com. All right, Tiffany's about to take off like a rocket, so get ready. So how did you find growing up with diabetes?
My mum, she couldn't deal with it. She couldn't handle. Halfway through, I stayed in hospital until the Friday the next week. Mm-hmm. And my mum just couldn't deal with it. And I was in there the first day. So I'd been in emergency, and then I went up to the ward, and a nurse comes up. Like in emergency, I can't remember what happened in emergency, but when I was in the ward, I distinctly remember a meal, and it must have been lunch. And the nurse comes up and she says, "Well, I've got to give you insulin." And I said to her, "Really now?" Because I don't like needles. Yeah. And she says to me, "Well, unfortunately, because you've got type 1 diabetes, you have to have needles before you have anything to eat. You're going to have them a couple of times a day from now on. You know, it might be once, it might be twice, because back then there was only, I don't even remember what the insulins are called, Protophane and something else. I don't know. I can't remember, because that wasn't what I needed to know. There was more important things to know than names of insulins. I just need to know which was the cloudy one and which one was the clear one.
Right.
Cloudy was long acting and clear was short acting.
Okay.
But then I didn't make them anyway. I had Mixitard, which was a mixture of both of them. Anyway, that's beside the point. So,
but that's the first time. But that's the first time someone said it to you. Like they were there with your food, and a nurse was like, "Hey, you're going to get injections every time before you eat from now on." And that you hadn't heard that prior to that moment.
No, because They must have given me an injection in emergency, because otherwise I would have ended up, I'm assuming, like going back now and reading other people's stories, I should have ended up in ICU, but I didn't. So obviously I wasn't in DKA, or I was, but they dealt with it differently back in 1991. I've got no idea.
Yeah, no, of course. No, yeah, I mean, who knows what happens, right?
Yeah, but I was on, well, after I left the hospital anyway, I was on Mixitard and I took 2 injections a day. But at this distinct conversation with the nurse, and she comes up, you've got to have your insulin before you can eat. And I'm like, hell no. And she's like, well, I've got to do it to you. And I said, okay. I said, I'll do your deal. I said, you can do this one, and then the next one I'm doing myself, because you are not touching me ever again with a needle. And that was it.
Yeah, that's interesting. You wanted it in your control.
Yes, yeah. Yes. And that was it. So I took control of the needle, and because I knew if I did it, I could do it the way I liked, and no one else would hurt me with a needle.
I think that's a sound idea, and psychologically it makes a lot of sense too. Like, if somebody's going to do this, it needs to be me. I'll figure out a way to do it that'll be best for me, and that way nobody else can screw up and make it hurt. No, I'm with you.
And so I was in hospital for a week. So my mum had come in every day. She must have taken time off. She must have taken time off work, because I do know that she came in during the day, and she'd come in and she'd always burst out bawling. And then one time the nurse comes up and says, "Okay, so your mum needs to learn how to give you injections." And I'm like, no way.
Listen, we're going to get that lady to a point where she's not crying before we give her the needle, right?
She probably wasn't crying by then, but she just was traumatized by the whole event. And so my mum's just like, okay, if I've got to do this. And I'm like, she's not touching me with a needle. And they talked me into it. And I'm just like, you know what? Because I was terrified. I had to have bloods taken. I would look away. I'd stare at the wall. I'd sing songs to myself. I'd make up stories in my head, because I don't like, even now when I go to pathology, I can't watch. I look at the wall. I take my phone. I play games on my phone while I do it, because I just don't want to see someone else sticking a needle in me.
That's something.
It just freaks me out.
But you don't have that reaction even now, like as an adult, when you're doing it, though.
No, but I'm fine, because it's me doing it. So I know exactly, and I've got to look at what I'm doing. But other people, even on TV, I can't handle watching other people, one person give another person an injection, but I can watch someone give themselves an injection. That's fine.
No kidding. That's interesting. No, really.
I'm just weird.
It really is interesting. All right, so like, are you still injecting now, or how do you handle like getting your insulin today?
So yeah, I was injecting up until I was pregnant with my little boy. And so I got my pump. I must have been 4 or 5 months pregnant with him. So I've been pumping for 2.5 years, maybe nearly 3.
Oh, that's crazy. So you injected for over 25 years.
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
And how did you, what about glucose monitors? Do you guys, I know you have one. Do you have it?
We've got all different ones. We've got the same ones as you guys have. We actually got the Libre before you guys did, so that's pretty cool.
I saw that, yeah. And what are you using?
I'm currently I use a Medtronic pump. I've got the 640, or as you guys call it, a 630.
Okay.
And I use the meter that goes with it, which is a Contour Next link.
The Contour Next link, okay.
Yeah.
And how do you like? I mean, it's interesting because you did injections. Actually, you're a really good person to talk about with this. So talk to about this, because you injected for a really long time. Would you call your time injecting like successful for your health? You were doing well.
Yeah. So before I fell pregnant with my first, I was taking what was I taking? I was taking Lantus and Novo Rapid, and my HbA1c was 5.9.
Oh, fantastic.
Just on injections, yeah. So it was pretty good. And I'd also just done a course called Daphne. I'm sure you guys have it over there. It's dose adjustment for normal eating, and ours in Australia is called Oz Daphne because we're in Oz, obviously. But it's the same thing.
Right.
And it's a course that was developed in Germany. by doctors who saw the need to help diabetics to understand how to adjust their own insulin rather than having to wait 3 months for every doctor's visit to help their doctor to help them adjust the insulin again.
And so they came up with this practice, and you used it really successfully. Can you describe it a little bit?
So it's just, knowing how to carb count correctly. It's a 5-day course, so you learn how to carb count correctly. You do sick day management. All the meals are provided while you do the course, and you just come into the area where you're doing the course every day, and they have snacks and meals, and they have regular food. They don't have sugar-free. Mm-hmm. It's we have Tim Tams, and we've got, yes, Tim Tams. We've got, jelly snakes and anything you want to eat, biscuits, all different kinds of biscuits, but everything's got a carb count on it, so that we have to figure out how to do it without the assistance of the diabetes educator and the dietitian who are running the course.
Wow. So people were so kind of frozen in the idea that I will live my life for these 3 months, and that any adjustments that have to be made to my insulin or the way I'm managing things doesn't happen until I get back to the doctor again. And this was the idea of, no, you could do this. You could make these adjustments on your own.
Yeah. Well, I was already kind of doing it, but I didn't do it. I was doing it really successfully, because before I did OzDaphne, my HbA1c was also 5.9. Yeah. I did it probably 6 months before I fell pregnant. And I'd been doing, but I hadn't been doing a very successful job, because I would have major hypos and stuff, but never anything where I went unconscious, except many years before that. But I did kind of look at things and go, that doesn't look like, 2 portions. That looks like it could be a bit more or a bit less, and so I'd have a bit more or a bit less insulin.
Yeah, you have to. Yeah. I think personally, obviously you listen to the podcast. I think you have to make your adjustments like that. By the way, fell pregnant is such a wonderful phrase, because here you might say that you fell ill, but the idea of fell is it's, you've been overwhelmed by something unpleasant, and to say fell pregnant is just, it delights me to no end. I really am.
I became pregnant.
No. Please, I'm not correcting you. I'm telling you, you're making me happy. Every time you say it, I'm like, I also enjoy, what is it? Something you guys talk about going to the hospital, but you don't say go to the hospital. You say, what would you?
I had no idea.
Yeah. See, isn't that funny? You don't even know what you say. It's hilarious. Anyway, fell pregnant. You've just made my whole day, is all I'm saying. And so you're 5'9", you're doing fantastic. What made you take the course, by the way, even though you were 5'9"? Did you just think I could do better at this, or did something they made you do?
Because before I did the Daphne course, I had been I had the same endocrinologist, so the same endo from the time I was diagnosed for 20 years, and then just before my 20-year anniversary, he says to me, "Oh, by the way, I'm going to move to Queensland, and you're going to be seeing my off-sider who you've been," because I used to see his off-sider occasionally, and then he'd just pop in. He said, "You're going to see this other guy called Adam," and I'm just like, what? And so I had to make an appointment to see this new guy. And back then as well, I'd have to drive 40 minutes to go see my doctor. And there were other doctors who were closer to me. And I just thought, you know what? Stuff him. I'm going to find a new endo. But I never did. So I was just going to the GP. I'd get new, get prescriptions for more insulin. The doctor might occasionally get me to do a HbA1c, and that would be it. And so I'd just go to a walk-in clinic and do it that way. So I didn't have an endo for about 4 years. And then I was in Melbourne by that point, and I moved up the top of Victoria to a little town called Benalla, which is near Wangaratta, where I currently live. And I get there, and I thought, I need to find a doctor's surgery, and I found one. And I go there, and the GP says to me, "Oh, you've got type 1. He says, "Okay, you can go see this guy called Robert. He's German, but he's really nice." And I'm like, okay. So I go see Robert. And he's not actually an endo. He's called a diabetes specialist, because in Germany, every single doctor, I don't know, this is what I've heard, so I'm just this is hearsay, so it could be true, it could not, I don't know, but apparently, allegedly, every single doctor in Germany has to do an entire semester or course unit or whatever on type 1 diabetes. Mm-hmm. So the Germans, they've got something going, they're thinking type 1 diabetes, we've got to do something about this, obviously, because they came up with it with Daphne, and they decided, we've all got to learn about type 1 diabetes. So they've got something going on there. And I go see him, and he's fantastic. I'm thinking, this guy's really good. Right. And he says to me, you've got to do this course. And I'm like, do I have to?
Yeah, because I feel like I'm doing all right.
Yeah, I'm like, look at this. Look at my HbA1c. It's fantastic. Right. And he says, but this course, seriously, do you actually know the carbs that you're eating? And I'm like, yeah, kinda. Like the last time I saw a dietitian was probably 10 years ago, but whatever. And off I go to do this course, and that was like a turning point. I'm like, I actually understand how to look at a recipe, and I love baking, so now I get a recipe out and I can figure out the carb count. I can divide it up and know exactly how many carbs are in every single portion of a slice or cupcakes or a cake. But just by weighing it now. And I never used to do that. I used to just go, oh, yeah, that looks like, it could be 50 grams of carbs, but, whatever. Just wing it.
Have you actually, with Daphne, improved on your 5'9"?
No, I haven't.
I was going to say 5'9"'s really good. I don't know how you're doing better than 5'9", but it just gives you more comfort. You feel more kind of in control. You're not guessing. You feel like that.
Yes, it gives me. And then because I did the course, I was like, because as I said, I'm terrified of needles. So the pump freaked me out because I didn't want to have a needle inside me all the time. That's the only reason I was against getting a pump for so long.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, then I'm, cruising along, and my HbA1c went up to about, because I was pregnant, as I said, so I was 5.9, and then it went up because when you're pregnant, these things happen and things get harder to manage, and I ended up at 6.2 by the time she was born. Mm-hmm.
Well, that's not a terrible increase during a pregnancy for sure.
Yeah.
But so let me say something, because I'm going to forget, because I am so just delighted, listening to you. I feel like this should just be your podcast and I should just sit here. But there's this one thing you brought up that I think it bears going over. So this happens to Arden a lot. She used to, obviously she's had type 1 since she was 2, and she'd go in and get her blood draws, and, she never flinched. And then one day, I don't know, she was 8, 9 years old, and she was just up in the corner of the room, like a cat trying to avoid water, and trying to get away from the nurse, who was like, Arden, I don't understand what's going on. I've been drawing your blood for, close to a decade. What just happened? And she just suddenly couldn't bring herself to hold still for it. And she's gotten better over the years. But anytime that comes up, even if it's at the dentist, where I'm like, look, Arden's going to be difficult to get numb because she really does not like the needles. Then the person will say, and I find this infuriating, and I try really hard to educate them nicely away from it. They're like, but she has diabetes. She must be used to this. And I was like, why do you think getting stuck more makes a person who doesn't want to get stuck, just forget about that? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
You don't forget about it because you do it more. If I said to you, I watch boxing. Some guys don't apparently mind if they get hit in the face. You hit me in the face once, I'm going to be very upset. And if you hit me in the face 50 times, I'm not going to be less upset by it. It's just a very strange idea to say to someone, but you should be used to this. And so you have diabetes. You're not allowed to have a needle phobia. You're not allowed to, that's just such an odd way of looking at it. And I think that does happen to a lot of people. They get that well, you have diabetes, so obviously you should just be okay with this. And you're not, it's just, you're not. But it's really interesting about the pump idea. So what you didn't like about a pump was the idea that something would be inside of you constantly. How did you get over that?
I heard of this thing called the iPort, and also the Libre came out. So I I ordered a Libre online, and it arrived, and I put it on, and it was like, I didn't like the sound it made because it goes ka-thunk, the little serter thing you got to use, and I didn't like that noise. So that was part of the problem with the pump as well, because I knew you had to insert, and using the little serter thing is like, I don't like that noise. Anyway, I put the Libre on, and I was like, this is amazing. I like this Libre thing. So I'm walking around like scanning myself constantly, looking at my little meter, going, this is amazing. I love this. Why didn't I do this earlier? And I'm like, hang on, if I can do this, then that means maybe I can do a pump.
Right. And that's what got you there. That was your bridge to it then.
Yeah. And then I got this thing called an iPort, because Medtronic do like free samples of. Have you heard of an iPort? So, I'm assuming you have.
Yeah, it's so that you can eject without putting the needle in, right? Like it's a port. It's a port that you use, then you inject into the port instead of into your skin every time.
Yeah. So that was kind of like, so I did the Libre, and then my what's his name? My diabetes guy. Rob, he says to me, sorry, I've just gone blank for a second then. He says to me, okay, Robert, he says, okay, Tiff, so why don't you see how you go with this? And I'm like, okay. So he said, go visit my DE next door. And so I go see her. She's also a type 1 diabetic. Oh. And she talks to me a little bit about it, and I'm just like, I'm terrified of the noise. And she's like, that's okay. She said, I'll show you I'll do this one, and then you've got another one in the box, and you can do that later on if you want at home. So she put it in for me, and I didn't like the iPod. It was horrendous. It really irritated me. I just couldn't handle it. And then I figured out I don't like putting sights on my tummy. So because that's where I put it. Oh, yeah. So I'm like, okay, that's a no-go zone. But anyway, and then I put the second one in, and I'm like, that wasn't so bad. So I organised, in Australia as well, you got to have private health insurance to get pumps. Right. So I organised my private health insurance, and my next visit, I said, okay, yep, I'm ready to do this. And I said, oh, and by the way, I'm also pregnant with my next one.
I fell pregnant.
Completely didn't want to, but anyway, they're only 17 months apart. Not planned. Anyway.
We just won't let your children ever listen to this. But that's fine. What happened? All right, we're going to take a detour for a second. Did you go to a wedding and drink too much? What happened exactly? Like, how did you stop defending your uterus from this falling into pregnancy?
After you have a kid, you forget. You forget to take your tablets every now and then. So that's why.
I swear to God, I don't know what we're talking about. I'm having a great time, and I'm very fertile, obviously, because before I had my first, I also had a miscarriage. So, and that didn't take very much effort either. Wait, hold on. The pregnancy or the miscarriage? What didn't take very much effort?
Getting pregnant.
Getting pregnant. I see.
Getting pregnant in general.
Oh my gosh, that's wonderful. You're wonderful. I'm so happy we're doing this. Hold on a second. I have to pull myself together. Give me half a second. Okay. All right. We're good. My favorite part so far is that Rob was German, but it's okay. He's nice.
Well, my GP was also Indian. He was amazing, and then he went and moved to bloody Melbourne, didn't he? He took his family with him, so I lost him.
Look at this guy trying to upgrade his life with no concern for you whatsoever.
He was like the best GP I ever had, because he didn't try to take my diabetes away from me and, tell me that, I'm silly because I'm doing this and that, which is what most of the GPs I ever saw did. Okay. And anyway, he moved away.
Yeah, but he gave you real freedom and respect, right? Not freedom because he left you alone, but like freedom and respect with your type 1. Like he I think that's really important. So so curse him for leaving. Let's hope he falls on something, right?
Anyway.
Anyway, how involved or not involved? I want to get back. You know what? Hold on. Where do I want to go with this? Here's where I want to go with this. You're really interesting with, like, I don't want it on my stomach. I don't like the way it clicks. I don't want to do that. Like, that's real. That's sort of different stuff than you hear people talk about all the time. Do you have that with other things? Like, are there other things in your life that Like you don't like the way they feel or don't like like when I go clothes shopping, if you watch me walk through a place with clothing, I'm touching everything constantly. Because if I don't like the way it feels, I wouldn't even care what it looked like. And
Definitely. Yeah, that's me.
You have a little bit of that tactile thing going on because a port on your stomach's not okay, but you can put it somewhere else.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I can.
Interesting. Oh, you are very quirky. I like that. That's excellent. But I think it's important to talk about because I don't think that for the people who that affects, I don't think we talk about that quite enough, right? Like there's this great technology, but what if it just is in your head all the time, or you can't take the clicking or the other stuff that comes with it? But you have been able to kind of overcome everything. You found a way around most of your roadblocks, right? Yeah. And so would you tell other people to press on? Would you tell them to follow their heart? Like when if something bothers them, just give up? Or what do you think? What do you think ended up being the right path for you?
Well, it's more the matter of just, looking around and just seeing what your options are. Like, so it took me 25 years and then the Libre to go, I can do this thing now. Like before then it terrified the hell out of me. And then, the Libre was the turning point. It's just a matter of just, seeing what's happening, keeping up with what's going on with the diabetes industry, the companies that manage what we have to do, what we can do to ourselves and how we can manage our diabetes better. And they just might come up with something and you go, that's it. That's what's going to help me to, get control of my diabetes. Like, I don't think I've ever actually experienced burnout. Like, I look back and I'm like, it was like when I was in high school, I kind of went, whatever. But I still took my insulin and never stopped because I remembered what it felt like to constantly be thirsty and to just feel disgusting all the time from when I was 11. And I was just like, I don't want to do that again.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I don't want to feel disgusting. And I've always had glasses. And I'm like, I don't want my eyesight to suffer because I can't see enough as it is. Like, I can drive, but if my eyesight gets worse, then I can't drive. I don't want to not drive,
right.
Well, no, and not be able to see.
Yeah, I think that what I just took out of what you just said was that when you knew what it was like to feel well, you knew what it was like to feel sick, and you were just trying to avoid feeling sick again. Where I think that there's a possibility that when we diagnose young kids now and tell people like, oh, it's okay if your blood sugar is like 220 or, 300 spikes fine, you are teaching that person's body to feel normal at that range. And that's, that can be dangerous in itself to give you a normal feeling at a 250 blood sugar. Yeah. Is a recipe for like a long-term disaster, really. So because I remember as a teenager having like my endo, he was quite old. Well, I thought he was old because he was bald. He probably wasn't that old, but he was bald. Bald equals old when you're a child. I agree with that. Yeah. That's fine. That's absolutely fine.
And we would have arguments when I was in high school about what I was doing and how I was managing and stuff. And I remember like storming out of his office. Like, this is after my mother stopped coming. Like, I don't even know why my mother kept coming because, she had no say in what was going on because she didn't want to be involved. But she would always come to doctor's appointments. Anyway, so we would have arguments. As soon as she stopped coming, it was like, this is my job now. My mum is not here. That means I can tell him off and I can tell him that he's being silly and he's telling me that, what he wants me to do is impossible. And like, my HbA1c would be like in the 7s and he'd be like, you can do better than this. And I'm like, look, this is what I've got to work with. If I can't do it with this, then I can't do it, okay? I'm doing the best I can.
Right. And by the way, did you notice my mom is not any help whatsoever? And so, I'm interested if you've ever had a conversation with your mom about this. Do you have any idea why she was disconnected from it or why she couldn't kind of dive in? Or did she fall asleep smoking and die in a fire and you don't know her anymore? I don't know exactly.
I've never actually spoken to her about it, but I don't want to because when she asked me, like she's got type 2 now, she was diagnosed a few years ago, and she says to me, oh, so how's the diabetes going? And I'm like, good. And she says, have you had any hypos? And I'm like, I'm thinking in my head, well, yeah, I had one yesterday, but I'm not going to tell you that because you're going to freak out. And I just say to her, oh, no, it's all good. I'm just, cruising along because if I tell her I've had a hypo, even if it's only like, a 3.9 or, like I'm just low 30, so 3.1, which would probably be like, I don't know,
55.
55 or so. Yeah.
Got my chart
and
right
she'd
here.
be like, she'd be like, oh my God, are you okay? Are you okay? And I'm like, this happens, Mum.
So what I'm trying to figure out, because when we look at your like tactile stuff, like I don't like the way it sounds, I don't like the way it looks, right? Because imagine, like you said, I can't watch someone else give someone else a needle, even on television, which, by the way, Tiff, is ridiculous because you're not because you're not actually there and it's not really happening and it's all fake and everything. But because it gives you that feeling, my question is, I wonder if your mom doesn't have something similar. And I wonder if watching it happen to you didn't put her into a tailspin the way it does when you're watching an old rerun of ER on Netflix. And so, that's what I'm trying to, that's what I'm wondering. And please, I don't want you to, I'm sure your mother's an older person now. You don't need to have an argument with her. But I was really interested to know if maybe that wasn't it, right? Maybe she didn't have her own kind of like issues and that was something she couldn't overcome. It's interesting.
Yeah, it is actually. I've never thought of that. That does actually make sense. Why she's so she was so disinterested in the whole thing, and oh my goodness, the blood test machine when I was first diagnosed. Yeah, because she had a breakdown about that.
Yeah, because by your explanation, she wasn't disinterested, and she's still not disinterested now because she's worried for you. You haven't been low, have you, Tiff? Like, how's the diabetes? You haven't been low, have you? I'm worried that you're okay. So yeah, I mean, I've interviewed people who we've outright said it sometimes, and sometimes it's gone unsaid. Where I thought, ooh, your parents just didn't care, and like where they were just like, huh. Well, that's for you to worry about, not me. Like that kind of thing. But your mom wasn't there. Like she tried to come to the appointments, right?
Yeah.
And she still cares now. I mean, how old is she now?
60. Yeah, 60.
Right. So, and she's still asking. She's asking you. So I think this is I think if we dig down, that's what's going on here. Does your dad have any weird stuff going on? Does he?
Nah, my dad's cool. He says to me, how you going with everything? And I say, oh yeah, it's all like I can be more open with my diabetes and with my dad because he's just like, these things happen. Whereas my mum's always about the other stuff. My mum's about, like if I, mum's like, if I had a car accident, mum would be like, oh my God, the car. And my dad would be like, are you okay?
The car.
Yeah. Like you have to be like, have you got your insurance up to date? Like that's my mum's first thought.
Mom, my arm's falling off. Yes, but have we told Allstate?
Exactly.
That's wonderful. Well, I think that I was just speaking. You know what's so funny? I was just speaking about a mother's love yesterday on a phone call with an Australian. If it wasn't for this podcast, Australia would just be a place on a map to me. But instead, it's not, because this podcast is incredibly popular in Australia. So I'm on the phone with an Australian who lives in America, and we're talking about something. And we were talking about like kind of the anxiety she was feeling around her kids' blood sugars. And I was like, see, that's like that mom's, that's that thing that's so wonderful, and yet sometimes it won't shut off. Like a mother's love, like, right? Like it's wonderful because it's there and it's so present even throughout your life. As you get older, your mom still feels that way about you. But at the same time, there's always this line where they don't seem to be able to like stop sometimes. And I was telling her that we had gone this past weekend a few states away to watch my son play baseball. And and he's in college, but it was the day before a holiday. So he said, can I just come home for the night? And then I'll go back to school the next day. And we thought that was great. We hadn't been around. He hadn't slept in the house in months. And we were like, that'd be wonderful. So, the poor kid gets up at 6 a.m., gets on a bus, takes a 2-hour bus ride, plays 2 baseball games, then gets in our car and is taking a 2-hour ride home. And he falls asleep. And his head is tilted to the side. And my wife says in the back seat, and she goes, his head. And I'm like, Kelly, he's 19. He's as strong as an ox. Like, he's fine. Like, just leave him there. He's asleep and he looks fine and he's fine. Well, 15 minutes later, I see her hand come up from the backseat. I'm like, what are you doing? I'm trying to drive. She goes, his head can't stay like this. I'm like, Kelly, he's fine. Leave him alone. Right? But she could not overcome the feeling that kid was uncomfortable. Like,
Yep,
you know what I
yep.
mean? And so she starts nudging his head up, and he wakes up and he's like, what's happening? And I looked at her and I went, I told you to leave him alone. And so, but there's something about, I'm not kidding. Like, I think there's something connected from women, probably straight from straight from the moment you have them inside you until the very, very end of their life for a lot of moms. She couldn't see him be uncomfortable. And I was like, he's fine. She couldn't. And she's a bright person. It's not like she was confused by it. She just couldn't overwhelm that. So I'm interested very much in what was so powerful in your mom's head that she couldn't overwhelm that to come help you with your diabetes. And I bet you it was something pretty strong. So that's all.
Yeah, yeah.
And I could be 100% wrong.
Sense.
I'm just a guy on a podcast. So I might be 100% wrong. But it seems that way as we're talking about it.
Yeah, he's loving and stuff, and he does worry a lot.
Yeah, no.
Since I'm also the only blood child by blood.
Oh, and she's got to hold on to you. Yeah, your dad's still just a guy she met. Like you're her family, right? No, I understand.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so overall in Australia, what is it like? Like you have private insurance, which I'm still, even through a number of episodes, trying to understand a little bit, but yet things don't cost a ton of money though, right?
No, it's pretty good. We've got this scheme called NDSS, National Diabetes Service Scheme, and it's funded by the government through taxes, and we pay quite a substantial amount less for supplies, and then if you've also got a healthcare card, so if you're on a low income or you're under a certain age, you also get an extra discount again on top. But that's nothing to do with private health. Private health is only needed for pumps. But CGMs are full cost no matter what, except they've just changed government funding again for CGMs.
Oh, good.
And now women who are in preconception for 6 months, they can get CGMs for free. Women who are pregnant can get CGM for free. And when they're breastfeeding up until the baby is 6 months old from the due date, for free CGM, and they can get any one they want. Libre is still not on the cards though. I don't know why, but everything else is subsidised now. Also, if children are under 21 years old, they get free CGM. And anyone who is hypo-unaware, this is only new, this pregnancy one and the hypo-unawareness. So if you're hypo-unaware, you have to have a healthcare card, but your hypo-unawareness has to be very severe, and you have to have been hospitalised within the last 12 months. And you will also receive free funding for CGM.
Gotcha. So I think it sounds to me, if I can have it 6 months. You called it preconception, which was fantastic. So 6 months before you're pregnant, right? Plus the 9 months you're pregnant and 6 months that you're breastfeeding. If you just have a baby every 21 months, you can have a CGM for free for the rest of your life.
Bingo, exactly. Yeah, but you've got to be a woman. That's the only thing. Like there are lots of men who are very upset about this. Now, the aim is that everyone gets CGM funding. But my issue, like I could, up until they changed the legislation again, I was actually eligible to get free CGM because I'm a low-income earner, and I have had but I haven't been hospitalised. I have had episodes where I've had a bad hypo, but last one was when I was pregnant with my first.
How low was that?
And she's 3 now, so. I haven't been hospitalised. I've had an ambulance called out, but I haven't been hospitalised because of a hypo, which means I'm no longer eligible. What my issue is, I would like it if they could say, instead of people getting free CGM, if anyone who wants can get a CGM at like half price or at quarter price, because that's how we do our medications. Like it's not fair for one specific group to get it for free. Why don't we all just everyone just pays a little bit. If everyone pays a little bit, then the funding goes further and everyone benefits rather than just these tiny little groups.
Right. Yeah, listen, I look at college, the way college is paid for in America, and I think the same thing. Like, how can my son be in a class with a kid who's paying, a few $1,000s a year to go to the same school that other people are paying tens of thousands of dollars? Like, what if we all just kind of like found the middle ground?
Exactly.
Like, right? And that really would be valuable. And especially for medical stuff, to say that you have to be sickly to get something that could be used preventatively, it just stinks. You know what I mean?
Yeah, with the this whole new hypo unawareness thing and having to be hospitalised, this makes a lot of people. There's quite a few people who have written on Facebook groups about the fact that this means that people are going to run specifically low so they can get low, so they can have a hospital visit. So they're going to run low. They're going to get the ambulance to come to their house. They're going to go to hospital. So they're going to cause more strain in the healthcare system.
And then free CGM. Because
they want to see free CGM.
Yeah.
That's it.
And that stunt's going to go wrong for somebody, and somebody's going to end up hurt. And
exactly. Yep.
You're putting people in a very weird position.
And I also read a fantastic comment. It said it's like bolting the doors to the stable after the horse has left. And I'm like, that's a really good analogy, because like, wouldn't it be better off? Because like my partner, he works away half a week. And so I'm basically a single mum at home with 2 children by myself.
Yeah.
And it freaks me out. Like I can get a CGM occasionally when I can afford it, but most of the time I'm just running off doing BGLs. I don't have a CGM.
Yeah.
So it freaks me out that one day my 2 and 3-year-olds, who have no idea how to use my phone because I don't like them using it and I don't want to teach them, screen time stuff, that they need to use my phone to play with games, and they're going to wake up and come into my bedroom and Mummy's not going to be awake.
And then they're not going to know what to do, and et cetera.
Freaks me out.
Yeah, of course.
And then because my partner's not home, like my parents live 3 hours away. They live back in Melbourne, which is 3 hours from Wangaratta. And they're not going to know. Mick's not going to know because he's at work like an hour and a half away in New South Wales, which is a state above Victoria. And I'm going to be at home with these 2 children and no one knows. And it freaks the hell out of me. So I'm hoping I've got an appointment to see my DE in a couple of weeks. And I'm thinking, maybe they can like wrangle the paperwork so that I can just get it when I have to.
Yeah,
I want to use it for any other reason. I do not want it. I would rather not have a CGM because I don't like having them stuck to me. I think they're bulky, but it's fantastic. Like, as I said earlier, I was in hospital last week and my friend who just had a baby, she's breastfeeding, I messaged her and I said, I need your help. Can you please help me? And she came around to my place and she gave me 3 of her CGMs because she got them for free because she's breastfeeding.
She was breastfeeding.
And I'm like, I only wanted 1. I didn't want 3. And she's like, just take them. It's okay. She says, don't worry. She says, I've got them for 6 months. You can have a couple. It doesn't bother me. And I'm just like, you are a lifesaver.
Yeah, and that's wonderful of her to do. And at the same time, it does illustrate like this weird dance that these rules push people into having. She's breastfeeding, so she gets some. So she gives some to you because you're scared. Ben, you can't get them because you haven't had a hypo that puts you in the hospital. But at some point, she's going to run out. And then, it's just, I don't know. The idea of medical insurance, everywhere I hear the conversation, it's just very frustrating.
Yeah. And anyway, but my DE, she's really cool. She just had we've got an election coming up soon, and she just spoke to the local federal member of parliament who's up for a nomination, and she said, "This is what I want to do," and she told you what I just did about having everyone pay a smaller cost amount, and then everyone can benefit rather than just having these tiny groups that don't necessarily it's going to benefit them, but wouldn't it be better if everyone had a little bit?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I understand there are going to always be people who can't afford it at all, and that's fine. But there's, listen, free's nice, but if you even could throw in $20 or $50 towards it, and that would keep somebody like you from having to pay 75%, could get you down to 50%. Like, there's got to be a way where everybody sort of shoulders the burden a little bit.
Because I think you can get subscriptions, but I think one box of 5 Enlight sensors from Medtronic is $250, but I might be wrong. No, it's more. It's more because the Libre sensors are $95 each Australian over here. And actually, you know what? I'll look it up. I'll go to the Medtronic website. Give me a second.
Yeah.
I'll look it up. Yeah. It's ridiculous. If everyone just pays a little bit, we'd all be better off.
Yeah, as much as you can, right? Like, I mean, until it's not a burden and so that everybody's covered. It's just, at some point, they're going to stop treating this technology like it's a nice to have. And they're going to realize that for the people who want it, it's imperative.
Yeah.
But
someone's selling on eBay for $350 for one box.
Jeez. My gosh.
It's ridiculous. I'm like, just make it better for everyone. Just benefit everyone rather than just going, hey, if you're under 18, if you're under 21, and then hang on, you know what? When you turn 21, you don't have type 1 diabetes anymore because you don't need CGM. So, we're just going to take them away from you. Goodbye.
Yeah.
Off you go to college, university, whatever.
Until very recently in America, people like on Medicare would lose it when they needed it most, when they hit like 65 years old. Like when you really start needing this stuff like really badly, then they're like, oh, you can't have it anymore because you switched insurances. You went from like your private to this, but they've gotten that finally figured out. But yeah, it's just such an interesting idea that, certain ages need it more than other. Like it doesn't make any sense, to be perfect.
No. And the people who are retired, you've still got type 1 diabetes when you retire. Like, it doesn't go away. Right. How the hell are they going to afford to pay $375 for one box of sensors?
Yeah.
Like, even the subscriptions are significantly discounted, but they still end up being like $250 every 4 weeks coming out of your bank account.
It's a lot of money, yeah. No, it's a lot of money. Even in Australia, where all you really have to pay for is like snake venom and like repellent and stuff like that, and whatever it is. I mean, whatever it is you keep your like grass hut like clean with. Like, so yeah. I know that's not what your life is like. But anyway, Tiff, we are up on an hour. I'm going to resist the urge to go back and listen to exactly how you described your cousin brother and use that.
You can if you want. I don't mind.
No. But you were fantastic. I really appreciate you doing this. And I know how hard it was for us to get this together and do this, but I appreciate that you stayed steadfast and we got to this point. I really am.
Okay.
I was really excited to have you on, and I think I was right.
I can always do it again because, I've got more stories. I've got when I went to America and Europe back in 2007, and my insulin got stolen in New York.
And wait, and then during the theft, the person who stole it from you pulled out a knife, and you said, "That's not a knife. This is a knife." And you pulled out a larger knife. And then what happened after that?
Oh, no, I didn't even realize until the next day because I was too buggered.
Wait a minute. You were drunk when you lost the insulin?
No, I was buggered. I was tired. I'd been on a flight for however many hours.
Okay. Oh my
time
God.
zones and all that stuff. Yeah.
Oh my God. So somebody just lifted it off of you? All right, we're going to find out this one thing. Hold on. So you get to America, and of course someone steals from you immediately.
Yeah.
But they took. What did they take?
The funny thing was that I went to America because I was doing a summer camp in what's it called? Camp Starlight. Lake. Oh, now I've forgotten what the name of it was called. Anyway, it's on the border of New Jersey, New York, and Pennsylvania, somewhere around that area.
And there's a lake there?
So Lake something or other. I can't remember. Lake Starlight. I think the camp, that was the area. And the camp I was at was called B'nai B'rith Perlman Camp, which is a Jewish camp. Anyway, so I had to go to America. I go to LA to do my training for a day. Then I get on another flight and I fly to New York. And then we land in New York and it's like midnight.
Mm-hmm.
And I get off the bus and I remember picking up my little bag, my little refrigerated bag that had my insulin in it, out of the bus. And I went inside to the reception area to book to get my room. And that's the last time I remember having my little bag. can't remember what happened to it after that.
So it's possible you lost it. You're telling me this? It's possible it
No.
wasn't stolen? It definitely stolen.
No, because as soon as I realised, I went down to the reception area and I said, "Did you see this bag?" And I described it, and I had a picture of it. I gave them the picture, and they're like, "No, we didn't see it."
All right.
And I'm just like, "Oh my god!"
So how did you replace your insulin being here?
I rang up my insurance company, and they replace the cost in Australian dollars, not American dollars. Mm-hmm. And of course, I bought them. They cost me $35 for a box, 5 boxes of 5 pens. So I had 25 pens, but I must have got a couple of scripts because I had more than that.
That's a long time ago, 2. Huh? Yeah.
So I had, it was in 2007. I was 27 back then. Wow. 12 years since I was in America. I must have had 2 scripts. So I had like $70 worth of insulin, and that's what they replaced. And I had these tablets I had to take as well at the time, which I still do take for blood pressure, like stupid. Anyway, they replaced the cost of that, and that was it. And I'm just like, how the hell am I going to pay for more insulin? I'm in America. Yeah. And my insurance company, I was in tears on the phone with my insurance company trying to figure it out, and they wouldn't help me. And so I ended up having to ration how much I would eat and be very that would have been the worst control of my life. I was away for 5 months.
Wow.
And I had to buy syringes. That's the other thing in Australia. We get syringes supplied for free. Any kind of we have to pay finger prickers, but apart from that, we don't. We get and pump supplies. You do have to pay for all your consumables for the pump, but we don't have to pay. We don't have to pay for needle tips, and we don't have to pay for syringes.
Okay. Yeah, some stuff's covered and some stuff's not.
I had to buy a box of syringes, and I was just like, this is going to kill me. Luckily, at the camp, though, there was a doctor, because it was a big camp, so obviously there's an infirmary and the doctor and stuff. And the doctor, I didn't have to pay and see a doctor because the doctor was there. Mm-hmm. So he gave me a prescription for insulin, and I had to take a day off work and go to the chemist, and I bawled my eyes out that whole day. It was horrible, just trying to figure out how I was going to pay for this stuff, and figuring out I couldn't buy pens anymore. I had to get disposable syringes, and I had to get vials of insulin because it was cheaper than buying pens.
Well, I think that really, I think that really highlights just the stress and the pressure that people with type 1 feel when they can't afford whatever it is they can't afford that they need for their health. It's a very omnipresent feeling that just it's overwhelming. This is the thing that keeps me alive, and now I suddenly can't afford it, and nobody's helping, and what do I do? And
and luckily, because I had a really good job before I left, and I quit my job because they said they would only hold my position for 3 months. And I'm like, but I'm going to be gone for 5 months. I'm going to America, and then I'm going to Europe. I'm going to go to New Zealand before I come home. And they're like, oh, no, sorry. And I'm like, well, if you're not going to hold the position for me, I said, well, I don't want to work for you guys anymore. So I quit. And
you fell unemployed.
But I had all this money. So I got a credit card, and luckily I got the credit card before I went to America, and paid for my trip and everything, and I had money to fall back on for when I came home. Okay. That money ended up being used to buy insulin in America. And so I didn't really have much spending money. So I spent the whole trip feeling sorry for myself and having to go to TJ Maxx, and I want to actually have something nice I want to bring back souvenirs.
Right. Not just what you could get for the max for the minimum. Right. Which is, I understand what you're saying. No. Oh my gosh. All right, Tiff, this is it. I have to go. You've exhausted me. I actually do have to go, but I really appreciate this, and let me just say goodbye.
No worries.
And I'm gonna starting the recording back up real quick because I'm gonna do Arden's lunch bolus while Tiffany's on with me. So, okay. All right, let me just tell. So Arden, a little while ago was like, I'm gonna go get a bagel with a friend of mine at school. So I think they split a bagel. I've never seen the bagel before. I did my best.
I love bagels. I love bagels.
Doesn't like bread, right? And so she's 179 right now, and I've got her coming back down. We've been bolusing, trying to I missed on the bagel bolus, the initial one.
Yeah.
And we've been bolusing, trying to get it back now. But now we're getting ready for lunch. So now she's got to go to lunch. So we're going to reset a temp basal increase of 95% for...
Our bagels in Australia are nowhere near as good as the bagels I had in New York. When I had at camp, oh my God, they were amazing with lox and cream cheese. Oh, yum.
Yeah, I don't understand how anyone, once they've had a bagel or bread near New York City, goes anywhere else and does it. Hold on a second.
It was anything I liked about New York City was the bagels. I don't like New York City. It's not my favorite place at all.
Mm-hmm.
I would rather go to Pennsylvania and go to Philadelphia. I liked Philadelphia.
You like Philly? Yeah.
Yes.
It's a good place. Let's see. I'm going to do a 12-unit bolus extended 50% now, and the rest over an hour. I have a lot of insulin going, so I'm trying to figure out how how not to mess this up, basically.
Sorry, I'm distracting you from what
No, you're not. I could do this in my sleep. But
you're verbalizing.
No, it's wait, so let's go over everything. First of all, if you're not from the East Coast, you've never been to the East Coast, whatever someone's giving you at breakfast and calling a bagel is not a bagel, and I'm sorry for you. The pizza crust you get is not good, and anything really that's like bread or flour, you're being lied to by the people who are giving it to. There's a pizza place in New York City that also has a location in Florida, and they truck water from New York to Florida just to make the dough.
Oh, wow. That's insane.
So
how cool.
A tanker truck full of water drives from New York to Florida, and that's how they make decent pizza in Florida.
Wow.
And the rest of you, I don't know what you're doing. Pizza Hut or something.
If I go to Florida to go to Disney World, I am not going to eat pizza there. I would rather eat it in New York.
Yeah,
I'll remember that.
Yes.
Cool.
I mean, you might find someone who can figure out how to make it, but the odds are it's a pale reproduction of something and just not nearly as good. I had a bagel once in Indianapolis. Yes. I was getting ready to get on a plane in Indianapolis, and I was leaving my hotel, and they're like, here, well, what would you like? I was like, well, I'd like to eat light because I'm getting on a plane. And they gave me this bagel, and I started eating it, and I said, can I just get some fruit instead? And she's like, you don't like the bagel? And I was like, oh, you poor dear, this is not a bagel. I don't even know what this is. I was like, but this is terrible. And please stop eating this. Get on the plane with me. I said, if you flew into where I'm going, got off the plane in the terminal, bought a terminal, like an airport bagel, it would be the best bagel you ever had in your entire life. You get back on the plane and fly back to Indianapolis. Anyway, Tiff, thank you so much. We're all good. I got Arden's bolus in. We did a temp basal increase, 95% for an hour. We bolused 12 units extended, did 50% now, and 50% over another hour. And I think this is going to do it. So, well, we'll see.
Good work.
Thank you. I'm now going to go get on with the rest of my life, and you're going to go to bed because it is now 1:20 in the morning where you're at. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. That is correct. Yeah.
Thank you very much for staying up so late to do this. I really appreciate it.
No worries. Thank you. It was good having a chat. Thanks for. I'm glad it finally happened after all the stumbles we had.
Seriously, might have taken a year to get you on here. So, thanks again. I'm going to say goodbye privately real quick. Hey, hold on till the very end. I have an update email here from Tiffany if you're interested, but it'll be after everything that's coming right now. Huge thanks to me for not doing any bad Australian accents during this episode, and to Dexcom, Omnipod, and T1D Exchange for sponsoring this episode. Please go to myomnipod.com/juicebox to get your free no-obligation demo of the Omnipod tubeless insulin pump sent directly to you. And learn more about the Dexcom G6 continuous glucose monitor. I genuinely think that it is at the core of every decision I make, and that you would really love to know more about the Dexcom G6. Dexcom.com/juicebox. You too can help with type 1 diabetes research while supporting the podcast. You can do a great thing for people living with type 1 and support your favorite podcast. I'm assuming this is your favorite podcast. Let me believe that it is, okay? Anyway, T1Dexchange.org/juicebox. You need to be a U.S. citizen. Answer a couple of quick questions. Make sure you're eligible. As soon as that happens, there's about 7 minutes it took me to answer the questions they wanted. There was nothing insanely private. It was about like, what insulin do you use? What shape were you in when you were diagnosed, stuff like that. This information they use to do all kinds of great things in the world. As a matter of fact, some things that you don't realize happen in the world. Medicare covering CGM. That came from this research. Certain test strips being covered by insurance companies. That came from here. So they're changing how insurance covers supplies. They're changing how, entities see technology. There's a lot going on here. It's the tiniest bit from you, and it has huge and wonderful ripples throughout the world with type 1 diabetes. I did it. As a matter of fact, on the first day that my link became available, 100 people did it. But the T1D exchange needs thousands. So if you can take the time, it really will just take a couple of minutes. You can do it right from your cell phone or a computer. The interface is very clean and easy to use. It's nothing about it is cumbersome at all. If you can take that time, I think a lot of good will come from it. So that's pretty much it. I hope you give it a shot. T1dexchange.org/juicebox. All right. Just from editing this, I feel the same kind of rush I got when I was talking to Tiff. She was just amazing. I hope you had a good time today. I'll be back next week with more of the Juicebox Podcast. Thanks so much for listening, everybody. And thank you for telling other people about the show and supporting the sponsors and all the great stuff that you guys do. Seriously. Oh, don't forget too. There's like 10 more days left. You can enter the giveaway celebrating 2 million downloads of the Juicebox Podcast. Go to Juicebox. There's nothing to do, by the way. You just enter. You don't have to do anything to enter. Juiceboxpodcast.com. Up at the top, it says 2 millionth. Click on it. There's some talky talk there from me, a list of the swag from the giveaway, Juicebox Podcast sweatshirt, Omnipod t-shirts, Lily's chocolate gift pack, 30-minute consultation with Jenny Smith, CDE, for free. Tons of Dexcom swag, tons of Touched by Type 1 swag, and looks like there's close to 2,000 entries. So, I mean, there's nothing to do. You just click on the thing to enter, and that's it. Not keeping your name, not keeping your email address. I don't get anything out of this. I'm just trying to give some stuff away and say, hey, thanks for downloading the show and sharing it with people. So if you want to take a shot at some of that goodness, head over there now, juiceboxpodcast.com, 2 millionth, little clicky click at the top of the screen. There's a whole bunch of links up there, actually. Diabetes Pro Tip link, the Best Endocrinologist link. Those are the Juicebox docs. There's a list of the episodes. Ooh, there's a link here to the free private Facebook group. Why did it take me 3 times to say private? That was weird. Signs and symptoms of type 1 diabetes. Ooh, the new BG conversion chart for those of you overseas, right? And I've got something exciting coming soon to go with that conversion chart, but it's not quite ready yet. Anyway, it's a pretty damn nice podcast. And I think the blog that associates itself to it is also pretty well done, if I do have to say so myself, which I'm going to have to because there's no one else here. And no one else gives a shit except for me because I put all this work into making it. Anyway, goodbye. Oh, hell, I almost forgot the email. Wait 1 second. Jeez, I'm sorry. Tiffany wrote, "Hey, Scott, loving listening to all the stories from everyone you have on the show. I was just wondering if there was a scheduled date for my recording to go out." Haha, Tiffany, you're delightful. This, by the way, is back in March. It's August now. Tiffany recorded this in January, and it took us a year. So it's going to take about 2 years for Tiffany to get on the podcast in total. But anyway, there's been some updates to the CGM Subsidity in Australia. On 1st March 2020, it was updated to now include those who have access to those receiving assisted benefits from the government for low-income pensioners. Low-income and / pensioners. Why am I being texted? People, leave me alone. I am trying to do something here. Oh, jeez. Now I have to start over. March 1st, updates now include those who have access to, wait, what is, Tiffany, what are you trying to, Tiffany, reading you is like talking to you. It's absolutely delightful. March 1st, 2020, it was updated to now include people who have access to those receiving assisted benefits. All right, Tiffany, you're losing me here. It seems like people who receive assistance benefits from the government in Australia for low-income people or people on pensions. She says, this means since I'm a stay-at-home parent, I can now access it too. Oh, she's excited. Happy dance. I just received her email today. She just received an email today telling her the application was successful. And now she just has to wait for the CD to train her. She's going to be using a Dexcom G5. Also, G6 has passed and should hopefully be available mid-year in Australia. Okay. I hope you all got that. I'm now exhausted. Tiffany, I love you. I think I'm going to start a podcast. It's just me and you. We're not even going to talk about anything. We're just going to talk. I'm now really leaving for real. This is over now. Goodbye.